The transport ship Viridian Dawn hummed through the void between star systems, its cargo hold filled with the most diverse collection of sentient beings the galaxy had seen in centuries. Representatives from 12 different species sat in carefully arranged sections, each area designed to accommodate their unique physiological needs. The air recyclers worked overtime to maintain the complex atmospheric mixture required to keep everyone breathing. Dr. Kethvar, a tall, crystalline being from the Zephyrian Collective, adjusted his translation device as he observed the newest addition to their expedition. The human sat alone in the corner, methodically checking and rechecking his equipment with a precision that seemed almost ritualistic. Marcus Chen had been assigned to their xenobiology research team at the last minute, replacing Dr. Halion, who had fallen ill with Rigelian flu just days before departure. The Zephyrians had worked with humans before, but Dr. Kethavar found them peculiar. They were neither the strongest nor the fastest species in the galaxy, yet they had somehow managed to spread across dozens of star systems in just a few centuries. Their technology was impressive, but not revolutionary. Their diplomatic skills were adequate, but not exceptional. What made them noteworthy was something harder to quantify, a stubborn refusal to accept limitations that would stop other species cold. "The human seems nervous," chirped Pipka, a small bird-like creature whose species, the Aviex, were known for their exceptional observational skills. Her feathers shifted through various shades of blue as she spoke, indicating curiosity mixed with concern. Dr. E. Kethvar's crystalline form refracted the ship's lighting as he turned to look. Humans often display anxiety before new experiences. It's part of their survival mechanism. Survival mechanism? This came from Grex, a hulking, rock-skinned Gorthak, whose people were among the strongest in known space. What could a human possibly need to survive that we cannot handle better? The question hung in the air, generating a low buzz of conversation among the various species. It was a fair point. The expedition to Kepler 442c was meant to be routine, a simple cataloging mission to document the flora and fauna of a newly discovered planet. The initial scans had shown a world teeming with life, but nothing that seemed particularly dangerous. Standard protocol called for a mixed species team to ensure comprehensive data collection, with each species contributing their unique strengths. The Zephyrians brought their unparalleled analytical capabilities. The Aviex contributed their superior vision and pattern recognition. The Gorthak provided raw physical power for any heavy lifting required. The Menthari offered their telepathic abilities for potential communication with any discovered sentient life. Each species had a clear role based on their evolutionary advantages. Humans, it seemed, were included more for their adaptability than any single outstanding trait. Marcus looked up from his equipment as if sensing the discussion about him. His dark eyes moved across the assembled beings with a calm assessment that made several of them unconsciously shift in their seats. There was something unsettling about the way humans looked at things, as if they were constantly evaluating threats and opportunities in equal measure. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Kethvar called out, his voice carrying clearly through the ship's translation system. "Would you care to join our discussion? We were reviewing the mission parameters." Marcus stood and walked over, moving with an easy confidence that seemed at odds with his relatively modest physical frame. At just under 2 meters tall and weighing perhaps 80 kilograms, he was smaller than most of the other expedition members. Yet something about his presence made the space around him feel more significant. "I've been reviewing the preliminary scans," Marcus said, settling into the circle they had formed. "The biodiversity readings are off the charts. We're looking at ecosystem complexity that rivals Earth's rainforests, possibly exceeding them." "Indeed," agreed Dr. Kethvar. "The initial surveys detected over 3,000 distinct species within just the first 100 square kilometers. It's quite remarkable." Marcus nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. Any predator-prey dynamics identified yet? The question caused a moment of silence. Grex rumbled with what might have been amusement. Concerned about your safety, human? The scans show nothing larger than what you would call a deer on your homeworld. Size isn't always the determining factor in lethality. Marcus replied evenly. Some of Earth's most dangerous creatures could fit in your palm. Pipka's feathers shifted to yellow, surprise tinged with interest. Your homeworld must have been quite hostile to produce such caution. Marcus smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Earth taught us that survival often depends on respecting everything around you until you understand it completely. Even then, respect is usually the safer choice. The conversation was interrupted by the ship's communications system crackling to life. Captain Veltar's voice echoed through the cargo hold, her Aquarian accent making the words sound like they were spoken underwater. Attention research team. We're beginning our approach to Kepler 442c. Initial orbital scans confirm the preliminary data. Surface gravity is approximately 1.1 standard. Atmosphere is breathable for all team members with minor filtration adjustments, and weather patterns appear stable. We'll be setting down at coordinates 23.7 south, 156.8 west, in what appears to be a large clearing adjacent to one of the primary forest systems. Dr. Kethvar activated his personal scanner, pulling up the detailed topographical data. Excellent positioning. We'll have immediate access to multiple biomes from a single base camp. The clearing appears to be natural, the captain continued, possibly maintained by large herbivores. Though we haven't detected any during our initial passes, all team members report to the equipment bay for final gear checks. Touchdown in approximately 2 hours. As the group began to disperse, Marcus lingered, studying his personal datapad. The others noticed his continued attention to the mission data, but what they couldn't see were the additional files he was reviewing. Earth's historical records of first contact scenarios, predator behavior patterns, and emergency survival protocols. His inclusion on this mission hadn't been as last minute as the others believed. The Human Colonial Administration had specifically requested a representative on this expedition, though they hadn't shared their reasoning with the other species. Marcus had been briefed on certain inconsistencies in the preliminary data, subtle anomalies that the automated scanning systems had flagged, but that the primary analysis had dismissed as sensor echoes or atmospheric interference. The planet below was beautiful. The approaching night terminator revealed bioluminescent patterns scattered across the continents like neural networks of light. Vast oceans reflected the glow of 2 small moons, and the aurora activity near the poles painted the upper atmosphere in sheets of green and gold. It looked like paradise. But Marcus had learned long ago that paradise was often the most dangerous lie the universe told. 2 hours later, the Viridian Dawn touched down with barely a tremor, its advanced landing systems adapting perfectly to the slightly uneven terrain of the clearing. The expedition team gathered at the main airlock, each member wearing their species-appropriate environmental suit and carrying their specialized equipment. Dr. Kethvar carried the primary analysis suite, a collection of sensors that could break down the molecular composition of almost anything they encountered. Pipka wore a sophisticated recording harness that would capture visual, auditory, and electromagnetic data across multiple spectrums. Grex hefted a portable drilling rig that could extract core samples from almost any material. The others carried similarly specialized gear. Marcus's equipment seemed almost primitive by comparison. Along with standard scientific instruments, he carried what looked like an ancient camping kit, rope, a knife, a compact tool set, and various other items that seemed more suited to a wilderness survival expedition than a scientific survey. Interesting equipment choices, Dr. Chen, observed Dr. Velnath, a pale, ethereal being from the Luminari Confederation. Her people were energy-based life forms who rarely dealt with physical matter directly. Are you planning to rough it in the wilderness? Just being prepared for unexpected situations, Marcus replied, adjusting the straps on his pack. Sometimes the old ways work best when technology fails. Our technology doesn't fail, Grex stated with the absolute confidence of his people. The Gorthak had built machines that lasted for millennia without maintenance. The concept of technological failure was almost foreign to them. Marcus nodded politely but didn't argue the point. Instead, he activated his suit's external sensors and began taking baseline readings of the local environment. Atmospheric composition was as expected, gravity felt comfortable, and the temperature was a pleasant 22 degrees Celsius. Everything seemed perfect. The airlock cycled, and the expedition team stepped onto the surface of Kepler 442c for the first time. The clearing was larger than it had appeared from orbit, stretching nearly a kilometer in each direction. The ground was covered in something that resembled grass, but grew in perfect spirals, creating a natural pattern that was both beautiful and oddly hypnotic. The air carried the scent of growing things and something else, something that made Marcus's unconscious mind prick up with attention. "Magnificent," breathed Dr. Kethvar, already beginning his molecular analysis of the spiral grass. "The cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases. It appears to grow in mathematical sequences. Each spiral follows a precise Fibonacci progression." Pipka was documenting the visual spectrum of the surrounding forest, her equipment registering colors and patterns that most species couldn't perceive. "The trees show signs of intentional cultivation. The spacing is too regular to be natural, and there are clear pathways between the major groves." "Evidence of sentient life?" asked Dr. Velnath. "Possibly. Or perhaps the result of some natural behavior pattern we haven't identified yet," Pipka replied. "We'll need more data." The team spent the first several hours establishing their base camp and conducting preliminary surveys of the immediate area. Everything proceeded exactly according to their mission parameters. The biodiversity was indeed extraordinary, with each new discovery more fascinating than the last. It was Dr. Kethvar who made the first unsettling observation. "The ecosystem balance is wrong," he announced during their evening briefing, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. "In a healthy environment, we should see evidence of predator-prey relationships, remains of consumed organisms, territorial markings, defensive adaptations in the prey species. But everything we've documented shows no signs of predation whatsoever." Grex looked up from the rock samples he was cataloging. "Perhaps this world evolved without significant predators. Not every planet follows the same patterns as our homeworlds." "Unlikely," Marcus interjected quietly. "Predator-prey dynamics drive evolution. Without selective pressure from predation, species tend toward inefficiency. Everything we've seen shows high-efficiency adaptations and complex defensive capabilities that serve no apparent purpose." Dr. Velnath's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. "You're suggesting that there are predators here that we simply haven't encountered yet?" "I'm suggesting that we're missing something important about this ecosystem," Marcus replied. "And in my experience, when you're missing something important about an environment, it's usually something that can kill you." The comment created an uncomfortable silence around the camp. The other species had their own traditions regarding caution and safety, but none of them shared humanity's almost paranoid approach to new environments. To most galactic species, the universe was a generally benign place where reasonable precautions were sufficient for safety. To humans, the universe was actively trying to kill you until proven otherwise. As if summoned by their discussion, the forest around them began to change. The bioluminescent patterns that had been barely visible during the day began to grow brighter as true darkness fell. What had seemed like random light scattered through the trees began to reveal itself as something far more complex. The lights were moving, and they were moving with purpose. Marcus was the first to notice the change, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt as he watched the patterns shift. "We need to secure the camp," he said, his voice carrying a note of urgency that made the others look up from their work. "What is it?" Dr. Kethvar asked, following Marcus's gaze toward the tree line. "We're being watched," Marcus replied, pointing to the now obvious intelligence behind the moving lights. "And I think we're about to find out what's been keeping all those herbivores in line." The expedition team had 30 seconds to prepare themselves before the forest began to hunt. The lights moved like liquid intelligence through the darkness, flowing between the trees with a grace that spoke of perfect familiarity with the terrain. What the expedition team had initially taken for bioluminescent plants revealed themselves to be something far more sinister, living creatures whose bodies pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to communicate in ways that bypassed sound entirely. Dr. Kethvar's scanners went wild as the creatures approached, registering life signs unlike anything in their databases. "Unknown species approaching from multiple vectors," he announced, his crystalline form refracting the strange lights into prismatic warnings. "Estimated size? This can't be right. Individual specimens measuring between 4 and 6 meters in length." Grex hefted his drilling equipment like a weapon, his rock-skin armor providing natural protection that most species could only dream of. 6 meters? They'll be slow and cumbersome. Easy targets if they prove hostile. Marcus was already moving, his hands working quickly to secure their equipment while keeping one eye on the approaching lights. "Don't assume anything about their capabilities based on size," he said, pulling a flare from his emergency kit. "Terrestrial crocodiles can move faster than a human can run despite being 4 meters long, and that's in an environment they didn't evolve to hunt in." "Crocodiles?" Pipka's feathers had shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme agitation. "What manner of creature is that?" "Apex predator. Armored, patient, intelligent enough to learn patterns and set ambushes," Marcus replied, igniting the flare and bathing their immediate area in harsh red light. "And those are the ones that hunt alone. Pack hunters are exponentially more dangerous." As if responding to his words, the lights in the forest began to pulse in synchronized patterns. The alien equivalent of communication rippled through the darkness like visible thought, and the expedition team realized with growing horror that they were watching a coordinated hunting strategy unfold around them. Dr. Velnath's energy form flickered with distress. "The patterns, they're mathematical, geometric sequences that adapt and modify based on our positioning. This level of tactical intelligence exceeds anything we've encountered in non-sentient species," Dr. Kethvar finished, his analytical mind racing to process the implications. "These creatures aren't just predators, they're problem solvers." The first creature emerged from the tree line 30 meters away, and the expedition team got their first clear look at what had been stalking them. The being defied easy categorization, combining features that seemed drawn from a dozen different evolutionary paths. Its body was serpentine, but supported by 6 powerful legs that ended in retractable claws designed for gripping and climbing. Bioluminescent strips ran along its sides, pulsing with the communication patterns they had observed earlier. But it was the head that made every member of the expedition take an involuntary step backward. The skull was clearly designed for one purpose: killing. Multiple rows of teeth were visible behind a maw that could easily accommodate a human torso, and the eyes showed an intelligence that was both alien and terrifyingly familiar. "Pack hunters," Marcus confirmed, noting the way other lights positioned themselves in the forest around them. "Probably evolved to hunt the large herbivores that maintain this clearing. We need to present ourselves as too dangerous to be worth the effort." "How do we do that?" Grex demanded, though for the first time since the mission began, his absolute confidence seemed shaken. The creature facing them was larger than he was, and its natural armor appeared to be at least as effective as his own rock skin. Marcus pulled his knife from its sheath, the simple steel blade reflecting the creature's bioluminescence. To most of the expedition team, the gesture seemed almost comically inadequate. A tiny blade against a 6-meter predator that could probably bite through starship hull plating. but the creature's reaction was immediate and telling. The bioluminescent patterns along its body shifted to rapid, staccato pulses, and it took several steps backward, lowering its head in what was clearly a defensive posture. "Interesting," Dr. Kethavar observed, his scanners working overtime to analyze the creature's biochemistry. The blade itself poses no meaningful threat, but the gesture triggered a threat assessment response. These creatures have experience with tool-using prey, or tool-using predators, Marcus corrected, keeping the knife visible while slowly reaching for his pack with his free hand. Tool use implies intelligence. Intelligence implies the ability to kill things larger and stronger than yourself. Pipka's recording equipment was capturing every detail of the encounter, though her feathers had shifted to colors none of them had seen before. Patterns that suggested fear beyond her species' normal emotional range. "There are at least 12 of them surrounding us. They're maintaining position, but haven't approached further since you displayed the blade." The standoff continued for several tense minutes, with both sides evaluating the other's capabilities. The expedition team quickly realized they were experiencing something unprecedented in the galaxy's recorded history. A first contact situation where the alien species was evaluating them as potential prey rather than as fellow sapient beings. "They're reading our body language," Marcus observed quietly, noting how the creature's positions shifted slightly whenever any of the team members moved. Predators that hunt intelligent prey learn to recognize signs of weakness, injury, or fear. We need to convince them we're not worth the energy expenditure. "How?" Dr. Velnath asked, her energy form pulsing with patterns that seemed to fascinate the watching creatures. "Our technology clearly doesn't intimidate them, and we're vastly outnumbered." Marcus smiled, and there was something in that expression that made his companions feel less safe despite being on the same side. "We show them what human evolutionary pressure produces when it's applied consistently for a few million years." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the largest of the creatures made its decision to attack. The predator launched itself forward with shocking speed, covering 30 meters in less than 3 seconds. Its movement was fluid and eerily silent, with only the soft impact of its claws against the spiral grass marking its approach. Multiple rows of teeth became visible as its jaws opened to accommodate what should have been an easy kill. What happened next would become the subject of academic study across dozens of species for generations to come. Marcus didn't run. He didn't raise his hands to protect himself or call out for help from his companions. Instead, he moved forward to meet the attack, timing his movement with precision that suggested he had faced similar situations before. As the creature's massive head descended toward him, Marcus stepped inside its reach, placing himself directly beneath its lower jaw. The knife in his hand flashed upward, but instead of the futile gesture his companions expected, the blade found its target with surgical precision, sliding between scales to pierce the soft tissue behind the creature's equivalent of ears. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The creature's nervous system, evolved for processing the complex sensory input required for pack hunting, was also its greatest vulnerability. The knife had severed major nerve clusters, and the 6-meter predator collapsed instantly, its body convulsing as its motor functions failed. But Marcus wasn't finished. As the creature fell, he moved with it, maintaining his grip on the knife while wrapping his free arm around what appeared to be the creature's neck. His legs found purchase against its massive sides, and he began to squeeze with a force that seemed impossible for his frame. The other creatures, which had been moving to support their pack leader's attack, stopped, as if struck by lightning. The bioluminescent patterns along their bodies shifted to configurations none of them had displayed before, rapid, chaotic pulses that suggested complete confusion. Dr. Kethavar's scanners registered the biochemical changes occurring in both Marcus and his target. "Impossible," he whispered, his analytical mind struggling to process the data. The human's muscle density is increasing. His cardiovascular system is operating at nearly 200% of baseline efficiency, and the neurochemical markers— "What neurochemical markers?" Pipka demanded, her recording equipment capturing every moment of the impossible scene before them. "Adrenaline compounds we've never seen before. His body is essentially poisoning itself to access strength reserves that shouldn't exist," Dr. Kethvar replied, his voice filled with scientific fascination and growing horror. "He's burning through his physiological safety margins to generate force output that rivals Grex's natural capabilities." The massive predator was thrashing now, trying to dislodge the small human who had attached himself to its vital areas like some kind of parasitic nightmare. But Marcus held on with grim determination, his grip tightening around the creature's neck while the knife worked deeper into its nervous system. "He's killing it," Grex said, his voice carrying a note of disbelief that his people rarely expressed. "A human is killing an apex predator with his bare hands." "Not just killing it," Dr. Velnath observed, her energy form flickering with patterns that reflected her growing understanding of what they were witnessing. "He's dominating it. Look at the other creatures." The remaining pack members had retreated to the tree line, their bioluminescent communication patterns now showing clear submission behaviors. Whatever evolutionary pressure had taught them to respect tool-using intelligence, the sight of a small biped systematically dismantling their pack leader with nothing but blade and determination had triggered every survival instinct they possessed. Marcus continued his work with methodical efficiency, his movements guided by an understanding of anatomy that seemed to transcend species barriers. The knife found nerve clusters, major blood vessels, and structural weak points with an accuracy that spoke of either incredible luck or terrifying knowledge. "How does he know where to cut?" Pipka whispered, her feathers now displaying colors that didn't exist in her species' normal emotional spectrum. "Humans study death," Dr. Kethvar replied, his crystalline form refracting the scene before them into 1,000 fractured images. Not just their own mortality, but the mortality of everything around them. They learn how living things die so they can make them die more efficiently. The creature's movements were growing weaker, its massive body no longer able to support its own weight. Marcus maintained his position until the last of its nervous system responses faded, then slowly released his grip and stepped back. The 6-meter predator that had seemed invincible just minutes before now lay motionless in the clearing, killed by a being a fraction of its size, using nothing more than primitive tools and anatomical knowledge. Marcus stood over his kill, breathing heavily but showing no signs of injury, despite having grappled with something that could have torn him apart with casual effort. The knife in his hand was clean. He had been careful to avoid damaging it during the encounter. The remaining predators watched from the forest edge for several more minutes, their communication patterns growing increasingly agitated. Finally, as if reaching some collective decision, they began to withdraw into the depths of the forest, their bioluminescent patterns fading until the expedition team could no longer track their positions. "They're leaving," Pipka announced, though her voice carried more confusion than relief. "They're retreating," Marcus corrected, cleaning his knife on the creature's hide before resheathing it. "Pack hunters don't abandon territory unless they encounter something that poses an existential threat to the entire group." Dr. Velnath pulsed with what might have been understanding. "They've reclassified us. We're no longer potential prey." "What are we then?" Grex asked, his earlier confidence replaced by a kind of awestruck wariness. Marcus looked at the massive corpse at his feet, then at his companion's shocked expressions, and finally at the dark forest where unknown eyes were undoubtedly still watching from a safe distance. "Competitors," he said simply. "And in this particular ecosystem, that makes us the most dangerous thing these creatures have ever encountered." The expedition team spent the remainder of the night in an uncomfortable silence, processing what they had witnessed. None of them would sleep well. knowing that the small, seemingly fragile human among them carried within his modest frame the capacity for violence that could dismantle creatures evolved specifically for killing. But more disturbing than Marcus's capabilities was the growing realization that this level of controlled lethality was considered normal among his species. The casual way he had assessed and eliminated an apex predator suggested this wasn't an exceptional skill, but rather a basic survival trait that all humans possessed. As dawn approached and the forest began to show signs of returning to its normal patterns, Dr. Kethvar found himself wondering what kind of evolutionary pressure could possibly produce such beings. What had humanity's homeworld been like to forge creatures capable of such efficient violence wrapped in such deceptively civilized packages? And more importantly, what did this mean for the rest of the galaxy now that humans were spreading among the stars? Dawn brought revelation and horror in equal measure as the expedition team surveyed their campsite in the growing light. The massive predator's corpse dominated the clearing, its 6-meter length making their scientific equipment look like toys scattered around the body of some primordial god. But it was what Marcus was doing that held their attention with sick fascination. He had produced a collection of tools from his pack that none of them had paid attention to before. Knives of various sizes, bone saws, something that looked like metal spikes, and other implements that seemed designed for purposes they didn't want to contemplate. With methodical precision, he was field dressing the creature's remains. "What is he doing?" Pipka asked, her feathers cycling through colors that indicated complete bewilderment. "Harvesting," Dr. Kethvar replied, his scanners automatically cataloging Marcus's activities. "He's removing specific organs and tissue samples for analysis." "Shouldn't we be using our scientific equipment for that?" Dr. Velnath inquired, her energy form flickering with confusion. Grex watched Marcus work with something that might have been professional admiration. "He's faster than our equipment and more precise. Look at how he identifies the organ systems." Indeed, Marcus moved through the alien anatomy with an efficiency that spoke of extensive experience. Despite having never seen this species before, he seemed to understand instinctively how its body was constructed, where vital organs would be located, and how to access them without damaging surrounding tissue. "Humans are persistence hunters," Marcus explained without looking up from his work, noting their attention. "We evolved to track wounded prey over vast distances, which means we needed to understand how damage affects different body systems. You learn to read anatomy like a map." He held up what appeared to be the creature's heart, a complex organ with multiple chambers that pulsed with residual bioluminescence. "See these secondary chambers? They're designed for rapid oxygenation during high-energy activities. This species can probably maintain sprint speeds for much longer than Earth mammals of comparable size." Dr. Kethvar's analytical mind latched onto the implications. "You're conducting a post-mortem analysis using primitive tools and arriving at conclusions that would normally require our most sophisticated equipment." "Sometimes the old ways work better," Marcus replied, carefully sectioning tissue samples and placing them in preservation containers. "Your scanners are excellent for molecular analysis, but they miss the big picture. Biology tells a story about how an organism lives and dies. You just need to know how to read it." Pipka's recording equipment captured every detail of the impromptu autopsy, though she found herself struggling with emotions her species rarely experienced. This level of anatomical knowledge, how common is it among humans? "Basic survival training," Marcus answered, moving on to examine the creature's neural system. "Any human who spends time in wilderness areas knows field anatomy. You can't track wounded game effectively if you don't understand how different injuries affect behavior and movement patterns." The casual way he described what amounted to advanced xenobiological analysis as basic survival training sent ripples of unease through the assembled aliens. Each of their species had specialists who devoted their entire careers to understanding anatomy and biology. The idea that such knowledge was considered fundamental education among humans was deeply disturbing. The neural configuration is fascinating, Marcus continued, exposing the creature's brain structure. Multiple processing centers connected by redundant pathways. This species evolved cognitive complexity specifically for hunting. They're not just predators, they're tactical specialists. He pointed to several structures within the brain tissue that were clearly more developed than equivalent areas in other species they had studied. Pack coordination centers, spatial reasoning matrices, pattern recognition nodes. These creatures are probably as intelligent as most spacefaring species. They just never developed tool use beyond basic levels. Dr. Velnath pulsed with growing alarm. You killed something that might have been sapient? Marcus looked up from his work, meeting her energy pattern with steady eyes. It was trying to kill us. Sapience doesn't grant immunity from consequences. If anything, it makes the threat more serious because intelligent predators learn from failed hunts. But surely there could have been some form of communication. Some diplomatic solution, Dr. Kethvar protested, his crystalline form flickering with distress. Diplomacy requires mutual benefit, Marcus replied, returning to his examination of the creature's physiology. What could we offer a species that sees us as food? What common ground exists between predator and prey? The question hung in the air like an accusation, forcing each team member to confront an uncomfortable truth about their own assumptions. Their entire approach to interspecies relations was based on the premise that intelligent life forms could find common ground through communication and mutual understanding. The idea that some species might be fundamentally incompatible with negotiation challenged everything they believed about galactic civilization. Grex rumbled thoughtfully. On Gorthak Prime, we have creatures that hunt our young. We do not negotiate with them. We eliminate them when they threaten our communities. But those are non-sapient animals, Pipka protested. This situation is different. Is it? Marcus asked, holding up another organ for examination, something that might have been a secondary stomach designed for processing different types of prey. Intelligence doesn't automatically generate morality. There are plenty of examples throughout the galaxy of sapient species that view other intelligent life as resources to be exploited. Dr. Kethvar's scanners detected something that made his crystalline structure flash with alarm. The digestive analysis is revealing disturbing data. Recent consumption of... Oh no. What is it? Dr. Velnath demanded. Processed metal fragments, synthetic material residue, and organic compounds that match the profiles of several known sapient species, Dr. Kethvar announced, his voice carrying the weight of terrible understanding. Marcus nodded grimly. This species has been hunting and consuming visitors to this planet, probably for quite some time, based on the diversity of residue in its digestive system. The revelation hit the expedition team like a physical blow. This beautiful world with its pristine forests and mathematical grasslands wasn't an untouched paradise. It was a trap. The perfect clearing where they had landed wasn't maintained by herbivores, but cleared by predators to make hunting easier. The regular spacing of the trees wasn't natural cultivation, but optimized terrain for pack hunting tactics. How many expeditions? Pipka whispered, her feathers shifting to patterns none of them had ever seen before. Enough to teach them that sapient visitors carry useful tools and provide good nutrition, Marcus replied, extracting what appeared to be a piece of advanced alloy from the creature's digestive tract. This looks like part of a Zephyrian analysis probe, probably from a previous research team. Dr. Kethvar examined the metal fragment. His worst fears confirmed as his scanners identified the specific alloy composition. This is from the Crystal Song expedition. They went missing in this sector 3 years ago. We assumed it was a navigation error. No error, Marcus said, continuing his systematic examination of the creature's remains. They found exactly what they were looking for. Unfortunately, what they found was looking for them, too. The implications were staggering. Kepler 442c wasn't a newly discovered world suitable for scientific study. It was a known hunting ground where an intelligent predator species lured curious visitors to their deaths. The perfect conditions, the regular clearings, even the initial sensor readings had been carefully crafted to appeal to exploration teams. "We need to leave," Dr. Velnath announced, her energy form pulsing with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "Immediately. This entire planet is a death trap." "Leaving won't solve the problem," Marcus replied, examining a structure in the creature's brain that appeared to be devoted to memory storage. "This species has been successfully hunting galactic expeditions for years. They've learned our patterns, our weaknesses, our standard operating procedures. Every team that disappears teaches them something new about how to kill the next group more efficiently." Grex flexed his massive hands, testing his natural weapons against the memory of the creature that had seemed so formidable just hours before. "What do you propose we do?" Marcus stood up from his anatomical work, his hands stained with alien blood, but his expression calm and focused. "We finish what we started. One dead predator might convince the local pack to find easier hunting, but it won't stop them from targeting future expeditions. We need to make them understand that hunting sapient species is fundamentally unprofitable." "How do we communicate that concept to alien predators?" Pipka asked, though something in her tone suggested she was beginning to understand the answer. "The same way species have been communicating territorial boundaries and threat assessments for millions of years," Marcus replied, reaching for his knife again. "We make the consequences of aggression too costly to justify the potential benefits." Dr. Kethvar's crystalline structure flickered with rapid calculations as he processed the implications. "You're proposing we hunt them." "I'm proposing we defend ourselves and future expeditions by demonstrating that humans are not suitable prey," Marcus corrected. "Predators learn through experience. If every attempt to hunt sapient visitors results in dead pack members, they'll eventually find other food sources." The expedition team spent the next several hours in heated discussion, trying to reconcile their scientific mission with the brutal realities of their situation. Every member of the team except Marcus argued for immediate evacuation and a warning beacon to prevent future expeditions from making the same mistake. But as the day progressed, and they analyzed more evidence from the creature's remains, the scope of the problem became clear. The digestive analysis revealed remains from at least 6 different sapient species, representing dozens of individual victims. The planet's apparent perfection wasn't accidental. It was the result of evolutionary pressure applied by intelligent predators who had learned to optimize their environment for hunting visitors from space. The communication patterns we observed, Dr. Velnath realized during their afternoon analysis session. They weren't just pack coordination. They were tactical briefings based on previous encounters with our species. Pipka's feathers shifted to deep blue as she reviewed her recordings from the previous night's encounter. They knew exactly how each of our species would react to different threats. The approach patterns were specifically designed to trigger our individual flight responses. Which means they've successfully hunted Zephyrians, Aviex, Gorthak, and probably Luminary before, Grex concluded, his voice carrying a note of grim understanding. "We're not their first contact with galactic civilization. We're just their latest victims." The realization that they were walking in the footsteps of dozens of previous victims fundamentally changed the nature of their mission. This wasn't a first contact scenario gone wrong. It was a systematic predation pattern that had been operating undetected for years. "The missing expeditions," Dr. Kethvar said, his analytical mind putting together the final pieces of the puzzle. "The Crystal Song, the New Horizons, the Quantum Dream. They weren't lost to navigation errors or equipment failures. They were murdered." Marcus nodded grimly. And if we leave now, nothing prevents the same thing from happening to the next expedition, and the one after that. These predators have turned interstellar exploration into a feeding program. As the alien sun began to set, and the forest's bioluminescent patterns started to awaken, the expedition team found themselves facing a choice that none of their species had ever contemplated before. They could abandon their mission and flee, leaving the predator pack to continue hunting future visitors. Or they could stay and fight a war against an intelligent species that had been perfecting the art of killing sapient prey for longer than most galactic civilizations had been spacefaring. In the gathering darkness, as the first hunting patterns began to pulse through the trees, Marcus checked his equipment one final time. The other team members watched with growing understanding as he prepared for battle against creatures that had never met their match. "What you're about to see," Marcus told them quietly as the first predators began moving through the forest around their camp, "is why humans are considered dangerous by species across the galaxy. We don't just fight to survive. We fight to win. And we don't stop fighting until the threat is eliminated completely." The forest erupted with bioluminescent signals as the entire pack converged on their position. Having learned from the previous night's encounter and adapted their tactics accordingly, but this time they weren't hunting confused prey. They were about to discover what happens when humans decide to become the hunters. The battle for Kepler 442c was about to begin, and when it ended, the galaxy would understand why human explorers carried primitive knives alongside their advanced technology. Some problems required solutions that predated civilization, and Marcus Chen was about to demonstrate exactly what millions of years of evolutionary pressure had created when it was applied to the right species under the right conditions. The aliens watched in terror as their human companion became something far more dangerous than any apex predator the universe had ever produced. A human being who had decided to stop being civilized.